Hello and welcome back to the 5th International Symposium on Art, Craft and Design in Southeast Asia, Arcadesa 2021. For the second session of day one, I'm Amalina from the Faculty of Art and Design, University Technology Mara, Malaysia, your moderator for today. Ladies and gentlemen, in making sure our Arcadesa stage continued during the pandemic, the Digital Symposium was initiated for us to promote sharing of views, ideas, and strengthen our relationships among the Southeast Asian countries. Please be reminded before we get started, if you have any question during the presentation, please type them in the comment box below. Thank you for being part of the auspicious celebration of creativity. Born in the southwest coast of Peninsula Malaysia in Kampung Batu Rembau, Negeri Sembilan, Professor Dr. Zakaria Ali received his early education at Sekolah Melayu Air Molek, Johor Bahru in 1952 to 1953 and continued his study at several English schools before obtaining a bachelor's degree in fine arts from Southwestern University, Texas in 1972. He holds 2 masters in history of arts from Mexico and USA, as well as a PhD in the same field at Harvard University. In addition to being a notable artist, Professor Dr. Zakaria Ali is also an art critic, translator, and writer. He became associate professor in University Science Malaysia, USM, and in University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, UPSI. He ventured into the world of arts through 2 mediums, namely through writing such as poems, short stories, novels, essay, articles, paper, and journal, as well as through painting. Professor Dr. Zakaria Ali had his first solo exhibition in 1982 at the USM Museum and Art Gallery Penang. His second solo exhibition was also at the Art Gallery Penang in 1999. Apart from his solo exhibition, he has also done group exhibitions with various notable artists such as Ismail Abdullah, Baharuddin Arus, and Muhammad Najib Ahmad Dawa. His involvement in the field of art has rewarded him with multiple awards such as Fulbright Fellow Award in 1981 until 1982, Ford Museum of Art Grant, Harvard University in 1988, and Aga Khan Travel Grant from Harvard University. Allow me to present our invited guest speaker at Arcadesa 2021 for session 2, Professor Dr. Zakaria bin Ali, on the topic preliminary remark on National Cultural Policy, DACON. Please, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I didn't hear your name, but thank you very much, Miss.
It's Amalina, Professor.
Amalina, okay. Right? All right. What I'm going to do is simply to read my text. I have my text in front of me, and I shall read it like a newscaster would, which is slowly and deliberately, so that my viewers can understand. Is that fair? Fair, right? All right. The title of my remarks is, the title of my talk is Preliminary Remarks on the Dasar Kebudayaan Negara 2021. The following remarks are confined to the 7 thrusts called for in the Dasar Kebudayaan Negara 2021. Specifically, Thrust 3, which is Pemeliharaan dan Pemilihan, and Thrust 4, which is Pembangunan dan Pengembangan Budaya. Matters touched upon when interpretations are made in art history, which I happen to know a little bit. The other 5 thrusts are for another occasion. Thus far, we have come up with 2 official documents on culture. Ironically, neither has the approval of Parliament. However, they are covered under the Antiquity Acts of 1976, which we shall tiptoe to see where we stand. Prior to the DACON 2021 is the Asas Kebudayaan Kebangsaan of 1971. We see that a new policy vision in 1971, a continuation marked by an awareness that after 50 years, no matter what progress has been made, there are still much more to improve. We note that the 1971 document is not really a statement of policy. The 1971 event was a seminar on traditional cultures, literature, music, dance, fine arts, decorative arts, drama, batik, weaving, architecture, and traditional crafts. 52 papers were presented and 9 resolutions passed, none of which, however, is binding. The Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports published them in Asas Kebudayaan Kebangsaan, edited by Muhammad Afandi Hassan. The seminar succeeded in inculcating the idea that activities pertaining to culture must be centrally guided and financed. Instilled as well is the understanding that the approved are rewarded, the disapproved shunned. The book provided a panorama of cultural participation of the various ethnic groups, joined together by the belief that without a coordinated overall view on culture, the path to nation building is hard indeed. Culture, like other forms of human endeavors, has its own set of planners, keen to hold on to the values that they wish to inculcate the incoming generation. Over time, the old guards are replaced by the younger ones, a point I shall touch upon a bit later. In the pre-internet era of 1971, the main concern was to have cultural information centralized. The fine arts writers of the 1971 document, Syed Ahmad Jamal and Reza Piadasa, saw the need to have a cultural center whose function was to disseminate information on art and culture. The cultural center was to be a kind of depository archives to ensure no art of any worth slipped into oblivion. Their vision of information gathering was to stock samples of works and artifacts from Indonesia, Indochina, and the Philippines, sourcing funding from UNESCO. This regional hub was meant to boost local cultures, initiate regional cooperation, and minimize rivalries. Both these two documents encourage. The center was to have sections on research, design and production, broadcasting, education, workshop, and gallery. The many universities, colleges, art schools that have sprung up since 1971 have addressed these concerns, succeeded in harnessing the talent pool to produce artworks of outstanding quality, turning some artists into celebrities of varying statures. Malaysian art has been impacted in more ways than one, displaying influences from many corners of the globe. The idea of a center, then, has since been reimagined and reenacted, catering to the ever-changing needs of the country still going through an excruciating agony to define who she is. Nowadays, any information can readily be Googled, then saved, forwarded, recycled, plagiarized even. The abundance of information, however, not only blur the claims of copyrights, but also encourage the practice of cut and paste, of stealing other people's ideas, of sidestepping the significance of originality. All this computer-based information does not make us any wiser. It makes us dishonest. Efforts to restore our cultural heritage has been going on with or without the guide of policies, even prior to 1957, the year we Merdeka. Often, such understanding are urged by powerful individuals for reasons ranging from self-glorification, abiding to religious dictates, to some untested gung-ho theories of cultural influences. We think of how the Candi in Lembah Bujang, Kedah, to illustrate the process of Indianization of the Malay world. We draw three lessons from these restoration efforts. One, unfettered zeal can inadvertently damage archaeological sites, destroy evidence, deface objects. Two, the need to have centralized coordinator to supervise, to check progress, to provide expertise. Three, any reconstruction must be handled by people trained to do so, as clearly stated in the Dakan 2021. We compare pictures of the Jalong bronze statue pre and post restoration to see what untrained hands can inflict, ruining a splendid work of art into a monstrosity. Like the 1971 document, the 2021 policy states a series of objectives, the means to achieve them, the resources required, and the payoffs of the commercializations of cultural products. As to restorations are to be carried out, the Antiquities Act of 1976 provides us with much more detail. Wielding power to issue license to dig is the Director General of Museums, who represents the government that owns all ancient monuments, the discovered and the yet to be discovered, on land, river, lake, and sea, anything constructed, shaped, inscribed, erected by human hands. Below him is the district officer, who in turn is aided by a pengawa or a penggulu. He reports to him any chance discovery in the kampong under his watch. We see a flaw in this setup. A dig is a site-specific. Any archaeological discovery is accidental. As in the case of the 9th century Jalong bronze I just mentioned, to give an example. Upon receiving a valuable historical object, the district office is required by law to pay the discoverer. We know that when a person finds a metal object of some Hindu deity, he has no idea what that thing is, much less how much it is worth. Highly unlikely he would report to the district office, which is not known to give out money. The district office instead collects money in taxes, bills, sending out computerized warning letters in red to those who default. Most villagers visit the district office with much reluctance. It is a place to avoid, if possible. If the deliverer could dispose the object to somebody willing to pay him even pittance, he would. We suggest that all old objects to be taken directly to the National Museum, where there is already sympathy. This would cut out much of the bureaucratic red tape. Thus, treasure hunters, be warned. The district office has the authority over the fate of dilapidated buildings on government land, usually in the old part of town, in which stands the courthouse, the police station, the hospital, the fire station, the Masjid Jame, the schools, the padang, and the row of angsana trees. Kuala Kubu Baru, for instance, has trimmed the trees, restored some of the old government quarters to their former simplicity and splendor, now occupied, even turned into an art gallery. The old railway station in Rembau, Negeri Sembilan, is gone, replaced by a modern Bauhaus, no frills, minimalist structure. Tanjung Malim still maintains the old station and the quarters next to the new station, now forlorn and almost always empty in these COVID times. We think of Taiping, Kolokangsa, Kolopila, where remnants of colonial architecture still stand and repurposed to new uses. The major buildings, like the Sultan Abdul Samad building of 1894, the Municipal Council building in Penang, 1897, and the State Library in Seremban, 1912, and the like, have been well documented. I advocate the preservation of all colonial buildings, quarters, and military bunkers. If we preserve shards of pottery to construct a full-bodied Neolithic jug to give us an idea of its function, then we can also reconstruct a feature of colonialism with well-preserved government quarters and military bunkers. Regardless of what we think of colonialism, of the havoc it has caused to our collective psyche, of the plundering of our natural resources, of the introduction to the British system of law, of the setting up of schools and hospitals, of the exposure to Shakespeare and Joseph Conrad. These buildings nonetheless stand as a mute witness to our struggles toward nationhood. We must learn to appreciate them as having historical significance, deserving of our attention. The Antiquities Act says that objects must be 100 years old to be protected under it. But 100 years old, the day the act was passed in 1976. I suggest 1957 as a cutoff point because it is fixed, as unmovable as the borderlines. As we age, the 100-year-old stipulation will move forward too ad infinitum. The Antiquities Act of 1796 lists the crimes people can commit with regard to heritage objects. Failing to report of an archaeological discovery, selling historical objects, demolishing or damaging ancient monuments, exporting antiquity, and failure to declare possessing antiquity can be punished or fined or both, ranging from 5 to 5,000 ringgit, incarcerated from 1 to 3 years. Such light retribution is no deterrent at all. The proceeds from the sales of rare artifacts can readily cover that. Neither policies, the 1971 and the 2021, mention the punishment for forgers, coins, statues, pottery have been forged to sell in the international black art market. Fraudulent claim of provenance, of public deception, of evading taxes, of misrepresenting the nation would bring dispute to the connoisseurship. An art of displaying taste and discernment, all reputable museum would want to be known for. We don't want a museum full of fake specimens. We have read about the exposure of the Dongson drums, of Buddha images, of Nataraja metal figurines, Ming pottery, units of Mukarnas, and blue tiles auctioned as originals. Duplicate artworks, on the other hand, makes no claim to originality. Made of fiberglass for display in showcases to educate visitors. The Batu Bertulis Terengganu, the tombstone of Sultan Alauddin Riayat Shah, the tombstone of Sultan Malikul Saleh are all duplicates, while still conveying identical visual and aesthetic information. We're thinking about evidence, any evidence at all, for which to self-reflect. A bright note is mentioned in Trust 4 of program melahirkan pelapis diteruskan bagi mengekalkan warisan seni tradisi yang hampir pupus untuk generasi akan datang. Any move to train the next generation of guardians to care for the cultural practices and heritage is hugely welcome. Otherwise, I would see what I seem to be saying in my field of art history. I have trained the students under me, some of whom teach and write, aspire to contribute, to make a difference. They have learned to see the quality of exaggeration in the works of Amrul Omar, the subtle abbreviations in Chua Tenteng, they have learned their lessons. But I've yet to see serious writings of their students who are challenged by the depressing issues of globalized art, the breakdown of aesthetic autonomy, the push to obliterate national identities. These problems are compounded by a computer-aided jargon whose key performing index is its inability to differentiate Dato the grandfather and Dato the birthday present. A well-grounded guardians of cultural practices is our surest guarantee to impede the multiple guises of cultural erosion. Discontinued cultural practices are hard to revive. We groom the young scholars by encouraging him to pen essays for peer-reviewed journals, by involving him in federally funded research projects, by giving him a chance to curate an important exhibition whose catalog is a testimony to his analytical prowess. Let him evaluate artworks, assess the thematical contents, the influences his style has absorbed, the way to elucidate meaning, and understand the vagaries of the medium employed when he selects, chooses, and interprets. Let him display his writing skills, scholarship, knowledge. Let him participate in international forums, debate a rival school of aesthetic persuasion. Let him concede defeat after his arguments prove to be bogus. Let him be humbled by how much he doesn't know. I end by quoting Shakespeare. Quote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." Unquote. Be sure we memorize our dialogues and play our part right on cue. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Zakaria Ali, for the refreshing lecture of preliminary remarks on national cultural policy. We have now come to an end of our session with Professor Dr. Zakaria Ali. These brilliant insights you share with us, we truly appreciate you taking the time to deliver such very thought-provoking and eye-opening and inspiring information with us. We are now entering the Q&A session. There are some interesting questions that have been identified, so allow me to address some of them. For question number 1, Professor, in moving towards developed country, what is the most important issue? Conservation of artifact or conservation of creative state of mind? And what should we learn in conservation strategies?
Is that a question?
Yes, yes.
Is that all right? Good, very good question. In a developing country, in any country, regardless, conservation is central, because no matter how long our history, how great our past, there would be bodies of objects left unattended and should be attended. That is where we preserve. And the next part of it is whether we should encourage creativity? Is that the part that the second part of the question?
Conservation of creative state of mind.
Oh, excuse me for the chuckle. Creative state of mind. Right, right. That reminds me of Collingwood, the British philosopher, who says that beauty is a state of mind. All right, it's not the work you do, it's not the voice that you sing or the poems that you write, but a state of mind. Therefore, whoever asks the question is very much like Collingwood. To be creative, you don't have to do anything. To be creative, you just have to think that you are creative. Well, I'm not sure whether I agree with Collingwood. You cannot have a state of mind that perceives beauty without having an object before you. We cannot perceive nothingness. We have to see things to perceive. We have to see things to evaluate. Therefore, you have to be challenged by an object, by a work of art, by a work of someone else, by, in fact, your own work. Right? Jadi, the answer is yes. It is a state of mind, but it is only the beginning. The next step is to do. The next step is to do. All right? Okay, next question, please.
Thank you, Professor. For the next question, based on your experience, in order to become an honest artist and authenticity value, how should artists reflect to their technological tools and medium?
Oh, well, by technological tools, you mean the computer, right? Is that what I surmise? Okay, the computer and other tools, right? And other platforms and so on, right? But remember, all these things are tools. All these things are medium. All these things have nothing to do with creativity, right? If in the Stone Age, all the man has is a chisel and a hammer. All right, that was the technology of the age. Now we have the computer, we have all these platforms, right? Those things will be useless unless you use them and use them for your own ends. Use them to make things. Use them to create situations. Use them so that others can share. Okay? So don't be bothered too much by the influx of all these technological platforms. They are just there to be of use. All right? Okay, next.
Thank you, Professor. So for the next question, based on Dakin, does Malay aesthetics theory will have another criteria instead of contrast, fairness, functional, symbolize?
Excuse me for chuckling, because that list was in my was listed in my book. I listed those things, right? Well, I think I listed 6 of those things. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah, as we go, as we proceed, whether you should add more things to it or whether we should subtract some from it, really doesn't matter. All right. The thing is, whatever point that the Malay aesthetics that I try to espoused 20, 30 years ago. Kesederhanaan, perlagaan, and the rest. Okay, we still do it. We still practice them, and the question is whether we practice them correctly, whether we practice them with commitment, whether we practice them with passion. You know, we can practice, but we can practice half-heartedly. We want to construct something that is balanced, that is keseimbang and all that, half-heartedly, without seeking the problems that setup would have. You see, I want to stress that follow those instructions, think of them when you do your artwork, but must be followed by commitment. You know, cannot let it take care of itself. You have to take care of it. All right? I guess I stopped there. Okay. All right. So next.
Thank you, Professor. As for the next question, as we live in multicultural environment, how do young generation sustain in maintaining their culture? Cultural identities.
All right. Good question. Good question, because that is something that we have always been asking ourselves. We are different people with different backgrounds, different aspirations, different values even. So let us take this in two stages. The first stage is we have to make sure that a child in a family, Malay, Chinese, Indian, Kazan, whatever, is culturally well schooled in his home. Okay, that is the task of the family. The next thing is when that child goes to school, where he will be subjected to all these other things that any school situation would have, right? So my concern is with the first one. My concern is at home. How much culture does that child has when he leaves at home to join the world, to go to school, to go to college, to go to UITM, wherever? How much culture has he got that he wants to defend? You know, that he wants to promote, that he wants others to understand and others to appreciate. So that is where I think where the lacking is. Because given the situation that we are, not everybody has equal access to education, to books, to culture, really. Yeah, not everybody. Yeah. The one point where all these diverse kids could mix is school. So that is where building a Malaysian identity, building something that all of us could identify with, starts at school. Okay, of course, the most effective tool is language, is bahasa Melayu. If all of us speaks that, then all of us have something in common that otherwise we don't have. Okay, So the binding thing is the bahasa, is the language. Okay. From there, we can start building. From there, a child from Sabah, a child from Sarawak, a child from Kelantan, a child from Rembau can begin to articulate the culture he's in using bahasa Melayu. See, the problem is, how do we train a child to articulate his cultural background if he has no means to do so? Okay? So if he has the means to do so, bahasa, then probably we will come a long way. Otherwise, I think we will still be living in a bubble of myth, bubble of misinformation, distrust, suspicion, and so forth. So my answer to that is that we can talk about ethnic cultures and so on and so forth. Yes, we talk about them, but we talk them at school, where we can train people, teach people to have pekerti, to have budi, to have a way, the right way to discuss, to articulate. Right now, I think what we lack, which is very for whoever you are, to articulate it and to make the person listening to you understand. Because when he articulates his, would want you to understand also. So it's two-way street. I think I made it a little bit clear, haven't I? Okay.
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Thank you so much. As for the next question, in your opinion, how should Malaysian artists and designer reflect to the world agenda, such as Industrial Revolution 4.0, Sustainable Development Goals, etc.?
Yeah, I have problem with that. I have problem, not because I can't answer it, but because it is something that is thrown around a lot. This thing called sustainable, this thing called sustainability. I'm very, very suspicious of that. I don't know why. Or maybe I do know why. When we sustain something, it is something that we take and we return. Something that we take and take only. So in art, we are in deep hole. We are really in deep hole. Okay, why? Because let's just give one example. Let us say I'm a sculptor, and I use marble as my material with which to work. And I carve a marble out of a mountain. I carve one huge chunk in Langkawi, for instance, where we have marble. All right. We stop to ponder there. Okay. We take that huge lorry-sized marble from the side of the mountain out. And you ask me, how are we going to practice sustainable art practices? We don't. We don't. We we take and we do not pay back. That's one aspect, which is the material. That's what you take. Okay. Secondly, let us say I'm an artist. I use oil painting. I use canvas. I go to art friends, I buy my material. Okay. And I have all this ready for me to use. Now I ask myself, am I practicing sustainable art practices? I cannot say yes, I do. I cannot, because I'm not. That's why you have to be honest. I'm not. I'm consuming. All of us are consumers. Okay. So I think the question should be redirected. You know, if we want to have material that we cannot replace, we cannot pay back, then don't speak of sustainability. Don't. Because that is, in my early days in Texas, we call it BS. You can't. Okay. However, once you have finished your artwork, once that artwork has been sold, you make money. Okay. Let's say we return to me as a sculptor. I make a huge, beautiful marble sculpture from Mulakawi. I sold it. I got $10, let's say. I get $10. Okay. Now, the most simple, obvious notion that we can hold is that the 10 ringgit, the $10, 10 ringgit that I sold my sculpture to somebody, I return it to the Pachi who helped me carved out, gouged out that piece of marble. Is that practical? Is that practical? Maybe it is for some people. For most people, it won't be. Okay? Therefore, the discussion should be not sustainability, but how much less can we use the material we use now, which we cannot unuse? How much less can we pakai? Remember, if you're a watercolorist, you have this. What is this? It's art paper, watercolor paper, okay? Here, my work. Okay. Behind my house. Now I looked, and I see it is paper made in England. It's by a company called Daler Rowney, and it has the weight of 300 gm2. You ask yourself, this paper comes from a tree. All the pine trees in Northern Europe, they chop down to make this paper for me, for you. Okay. Or maybe they have a policy, you chop down trees, you plant trees. I think I have somewhere jotted down in my notes that for the New York Times, newspaper, the New York Times, they chopped up 75,000 trees for each day of the edition of the New York Times. 75,000 trees, pine trees. But they have huge tract of land where they recycle, not recycle, where they replant. So by the time this batch is harvested, or this batch can be harvested, then it will be harvested and it circles. And that is my picture of sustainability. But that is different. That is New York Times. We are no match with them. Okay. So for us small artists in countries of Malaysia, do we use less paper? How would I tell people to use less paper? I can't say that. And I wouldn't say that. Maybe we should quit being artists. We should quit being consumers. Instead, be producers. Instead of cutting trees, we plant trees. Instead of using paper, we make paper from waste. Instead of buying watercolor, we make colors from earth, organic and inorganic, whatever. Maybe that is the picture that we can visualize. But as an open question, how do we sustain? We can't. Right? So that is my answer. I think that is my answer. Yes.
Thank you, Professor. And for our final question,
all right.
What are your hopes for the art institution in order to secure Deacon's success in an intellectually diverse environment?
What's the first part of the question? I didn't get it.
What are your hopes for the art institution?
My hope. Yeah, okay, all right. Good. I have high hopes. Yes, I have high hopes. The fact that we have this back in 2021 is very good because it is a guideline. It's not binding, it's a guideline. And nothing matters more when we have a guideline to guide us. We can argue about the means to achieve them. We can argue about the sources of finances to achieve them. But all that will come to nothing if each and every individual art person, I don't want to call artist, art person, whether music or theater or whatever, commit his craft with a passion that I was talking about. If only kita main ikut-ikutan, I don't think we'll go far. Commit. That is what I want. So if we have commitment, then that dasa can be successful. Not all of it, some of it can be successful. Commitment. All right? I think that's my answer, commitment.
Thank you, Professor, for your feedback and remarks. Once again, we are pleased to have Professor Dr. Zakaria bin Ali in Arcadesa 2021, and we greatly appreciate your significant contribution I will pass the screen back to Dr. Hazlin, our host for today.
Now we have come to an end of our sessions with Dr. Zakaria, and this is wonderful insight you share with us. We truly appreciate your taking the time to share such very useful resources. I would like to take this opportunity to extend our gratitude and thank all respected lecturers, professors, and dearest friends for all the Indonesian Art Institute, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, Silpakan University, Thailand, and of course from University of Jimara, Malaysia, for joining us at the Arcadesa 2021. Coming up tomorrow, don't miss out Arcadesa stage with Professor Nantanit Wachina Chinewa from Silpakan University, Thailand, and Dr. Timpul Rohatjo from Institut Seni Indonesia, followed by Associate Professor T.S. Dr. Azari bin Hashim from University of Jimara. Malaysia, and also the Assistant Professor Dr. Jitapun Chumkati from Silpakan University, Thailand. So we have many upcoming events for you to join. If you are on Instagram, do follow Arcadesa 5, and also you may follow Arcadesa 5 Facebook page. I'm Hazlin Shaharuddin. Until then, stay safe and take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.